You're with World News Today from BBC World. I'm David Eades. Now, barely a day goes by that we don't see or hear about the conflict in Iraq, and it's that which sometimes makes it difficult to reach into the lives of ordinary people there. One journalist, though, has tried to go beyond reporting the bombs and the mortar attacks to discover what it's like for people actually living in a country ravaged by war. Hadani Ditmars has published a book, Dancing in the No-Fly Zone it's called, and she's here in the studio to tell us more about it. Hadani, first of all, perhaps just give us a sense as to what it is you went out to do and how you went about getting your material.
Well, you know, I first went to Iraq in 1997 on assignment for the New York Times, and I was there ostensibly to cover the weapons inspection crisis that was going on. And that story was sort of interesting for a couple of days, but what I found was so compelling were the very human stories. The culture itself really drew me in, the people, their resilience, their heritage. So I went back many times in pre-invasion Iraq to report for a number of media, including the London Independent.
Yeah.
And then I was commissioned to write this book post-invasion, because ironically it took the invasion for the world to become interested in the plight of Iraqi civilians.
Yeah, and I guess that is the part of it that everyone's fascinated by, what real life is like for real normal people in this horrific environment.
Yes. Well, the human cost of sanctions, Saddam, and then invasion and occupation is something I've been documenting consistently. My book is about the post-invasion period from August until October 2003, when I went back, in essence, to catch up with all the contacts and people I'd come to know since 1997.
It was very personal stuff, isn't it? I mean, it feels like you're close to a lot of the people. You're meeting them in a very informal way. They don't seem to be that aware, as we've been looking at some of the pictures here, of you as a journalist in their midst, more as someone they've got to know.
Well, I suppose also because I could sort of pass physically as an Iraqi because of my Lebanese background, and also just my love for the culture and the place and the people that I knew. There was a connection there that was beyond a kind of formal or almost kind of colonial relationship.
Yeah, and what sort of life is it then that they're tackling?
Well, Iraqi civilians have lived through decades of war and sanctions and oppression of various forms. I didn't think that it could really get worse than it did at the height of Saddam and sanctions. And I think for a lot of people it was quite a shock to see how things turned out. By gauging people's lives in terms of just, as you say, their daily life, for instance, the hairdresser, single mother war widow we're talking from the first Gulf War, whose husband died on the highway of death, raised 2 children in sanctions-plagued Baghdad by running a beauty parlor, only to save up enough money just before the U.S. invasion in 2003 to buy her own salon, and then 6 months later to be firebombed by fundamentalists. So I guess my concern has always been, of course, with the realpolitik, which you can't ignore, but how that really impacts on everyday people's lives. I think we all agree that, unfortunately, post-invasion, things are much worse for women, for religious minorities. There's this terrible combination of criminal anarchy and de facto theocracy, that, not to mention the enshrining of regressive Sharia law into the Constitution, right, that has made things really terrible for women. But another sector I was very connected with was the cultural sector. My friends who were painters and writers and playwrights and cellists.
Well, that is something reflected in the book, clearly, which looks like a fascinating read. And thank you very much.